Testing. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and good afternoon to you all. I'm honored to be moderating the first panel session of today at the third day of Attack and the second day of WiCSME's hybrid event of 2021. I'd like to welcome our in-person attendees as well as our virtual attendees joining us from the WiCSME platform. I'm Noha Algwaiz, and today we'll be tackling a topic that is of high relevance to the kingdom. It is the topic of smart cities. And this topic has passed its status of being a conversational topic. It is a reality we're living in, and it's something we're witnessing in the kingdom. And what better stage to tackle the cyber concerns of smart cities as they venture towards resilient and an empowered future than at the largest cybersecurity event in the region. And this topic is brought to life with an esteemed lineup of panelists. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists, Dr. Amira Khattab, Cybersecurity Partner at Deloitte.
Thank you.
Dr. Haya Almagwashi, General Manager at the National Cybersecurity Authority of Saudi Arabia. Ms. Dheba Alrashid, Head of Cybersecurity Programs Development at Saudi Aramco. And Dr. Fatemah Alharbi, Cybersecurity Consultant, Research, and Assistant Professor at Taibah University in Yanbu. Welcome, dear panelists.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited to take on this topic with you all, as we have, if you guys watched Heidi's levels of the society, as we want to swim through the government level as we dive into the individual level in tackling this topic. And before we venture on and dive into this topic, I want to ensure that we have a common understanding of what smart cities are. So we want to establish this common understanding with our audience and amongst ourselves. And we want to take on the technical definition of the underlying technology of what makes up smart cities. We can start with you, Dr. Fatemah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's really an honor to be here and participate in this great event, which is considered the largest regional cybersecurity event. So smart city is used as a catch-all for a diverse of topics. And as you have mentioned, Noha, smart cities are defined in many different ways, and people look at smart cities from different perspectives, from different angles. And we can say mostly all people agree on the main objective of smart cities, which is quite common, which is about enhancing the performance, optimizing the resources, reducing the cost, reducing the consumption, and most importantly, improving the quality of life of the citizens. In my humble opinion, if I would give a technological definition for a smart city, I would define it as a modern urban area that connects multiple IoT devices, all of them together. And what I mean by IoT devices, we can say like sensors, microcontrollers, Arduinos, and these devices are used to collect data for specific reasons from the citizens. And let's pause here a little bit to talk very briefly about smart cities from a security perspective, which is the main topic of this panel, which is about how we can build smart cities in a secure manner. We might already know that the information gained from these collected data is processed and analyzed, let's say, for example, for managing the traffic, for crime detection, for schools, for libraries, for all the community services available in the smart city. But the question here, what about the security of the IoTs, or the security of the smart cities, or the privacy of the smart cities? What are the trade-offs that needs to be taken into consideration when we want to build smart cities to trade off, let's say, between privacy, between data protection, data privacy, and performance? And I think this is still an open problem that needs to be solved by specialists and practitioners in the field.
Thank you, Dr. Fatemah. We hear a lot of buzzwords when we hear smart cities, IoT, artificial intelligence, e-government. We want to understand what role do they play in making cities smart? And we want to understand the linkage between the two. Ms. Dheba?
So if we think about smart cities, really at its core, it's about Internet of Things and emerging technologies. So Internet of devices such as smart meters or cameras or fitness trackers, when accompanied by machine learning and artificial intelligence, will take us to the next step of realizing the value and the objective of smart cities.
Amazing. And so we see these technologies evolving, and we're witnessing how they're being leveraged for us to get the best out of them. What is actually driving us to adopt these smart cities?
Yes. So you're addressing this question to me. Great. So I want to go back to the essence of why, at the beginning, they started the concept of smart cities. Over 50% of the population lives in cities, so urbanization is a big problem. So smart cities concept has been created to solve the biggest challenges that are facing humanity. Over 200 countries come together in order to solve those problems and achieve the SDG, United Nations goals. And smart cities is a great conduit to do that. Now, you wanted to ask me about NEOM because last week I was at NEOM and we were looking at earlier on in the hallway the difference between smart cities and cognitive cities. So NEOM specifically goes beyond the smart cities, and a great example of what cognitive cities are. And cognitive cities is not just a smart city, but it actually brings together the reservoir of data that you've talked about and all the ICT and the platforms, the emerging technologies, and the citizens and the people, and bring all of those three together, and they interact, and that interaction helps the smart city, which is a cognitive city, to continuously learn in order to create a resilient and an environment where people and the planet and nature live in harmony. And that's why sustainability is at the heart of NEOM. So going back to NEOM and our conversation back in the hallway, the NEOM is a great opportunity for us to start in a greenfield area. You don't get every day an opportunity to build a city from scratch where you bring in the best of emerging technologies, of AI, machine learning, and the people in order to achieve that vision of 2030. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It actually excites me to see what technology comes up with next.
Yes.
However, the basic formula in the cybersecurity field is the faster technology is, the more challenging and the more threats are being introduced in this field. So we want to understand what cyber threats are on the horizon as these smart cities emerge. We want to tackle that from a technical perspective, Dr. Fatemah.
Okay. So, as we all might already know, investments continue to pour into cybersecurity and cyber attacks. And according to a recent report by PwC, mostly 70% of organizations predict a rise in cyber spending in 2022 compared to 55% just by last year. Already 2021 is shaping up to be the worst in record for cybersecurity and cyber attacks. The numbers are scaring for us while we live in, let's say, normal cities. And I will ask what the situation will be if we shift to live in smart cities. We know that smart cities are based on the IoT infrastructure, right? And the number of interconnected IoT devices continue to rise year by year. And according to a recent report by Statista, it's predicted that there will be more than 75 billion interconnected devices by the year of 2025. And maybe here we can ask a question. Do you think the companies, I mean the vendors, take into consideration security when building IoTs? Of course not. Because they rather or prefer to sacrifice security and retain performance for business purposes. And this is the reality, unfortunately. According to many technical reports, such as TAIL, SonicWall, Kaspersky, the IoT has become the prime target for IoT hackers, okay? So basically, the hackers were able to launch not only small-scale attacks targeting, let's say, small appliances like the home appliances, but they also were able to launch larger-scale attacks. And for instance, here I will give the MyRiPutNet attack that first happened back in 2017. This attack, the main target of this attack was the domain naming system, the DNS, which is the core protocol of the internet. The hackers here took vulnerabilities found in the Linux kernels. Basically, they were outdated, and the usernames and password that used by the customers were default, so they just used the default settings. So unfortunately, these vulnerabilities facilitate the mission to the hackers to launch a distributed denial-of-service attack on the DNS infrastructure. And this is just an example. For the sake of time, I couldn't explore all the attacks, but we can always go to the history and read the news to explore more attack surfaces targeting the IoTs. For that, many researchers and activists insisted in stop making IoTs at all. Apparently, their design doesn't support security by default. And one of them is Bruce Chenier, who's, as we all might already know, an experienced journalist in the field. He even described IoT devices as killer devices. So by looking at all these attack surfaces and all these examples of attacks, we really need to take into consideration and analyzing the best defenses that would close all these vulnerabilities when we want to build a smart and resilient smart city.
I love that swim through the ever-expanding attack surface of smart cities. And you mentioned how IoTs are making us more interconnected, where our data fuels how efficient these smart cities are. So how can we address the data privacy concerns inherent in smart cities? Ms. Dheba.
So we have talked about the Internet of Things devices and the presence of the cameras and data collection. This might be perceived as invasion of privacy. Also, government surveillance or even data theft in this scenario. So really, we need to have an open communication and transparency with the people to understand what are their security and privacy concerns. I personally believe it's important to have the traditional collaboration between a regulator and regulated entity to be evolved into more collaborative and partnership to address any security concern and address the public and the citizens' interest. Thank you.
Great. And our communities, and it is no surprise, our communities are becoming really tech savvy, and they're demanding this efficient and one-click away lifestyle. And so we want to leverage the efficiency and the convenience that smart cities bring, but how can we do that without compromising data privacy? And if I can address that to you, Dr. Haya.
Assalamu alaikum, Ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you so much, Noha, for having me here, and thanks for WiCSME for giving us this opportunity, and thanks for the audience. I'm so thrilled, actually, about our men female, actually, who's really attending this. Just to get back to this, allow me to go back a bit to the definition. I like to make things a bit, let's say, simpler. So smart, who said that we have a smartphone? They put it actually as a marketing thing. However, smart city can't be only a marketing thing. It should be a reality that we live in, okay? And if it's a reality that we live in, we should really, let's say, put it into, in small definition. It is actually your physical infrastructure, on the top of it, an IT or OT infrastructure, and the data, and then whatever is the application, and all of it without a government will actually to do all this and make it all synchronized. So if I answer your question about the data privacy, always in most of the research, they link with smart city or IoT with the threat on data privacy. But I would like to distinguish between the two terms, data privacy and data protection. Data protection, it's, you know your data, you know you're collecting it, but however, you need to, throughout this data life cycle, you need to make sure that it's protected from the beginning to the end. However, when we talk about, and it's less actually, let's say, complicated to understand. However, it's more complicated with the technology that we need to make sure that throughout this life cycle, and sometimes, and most of the time, we need regulation also to ensure it. However, when we talk about data privacy, there's a cultural actually dimension about data privacy. What is data privacy? What is private for me is not private for my son. We are in the same house. What is private for me or as a family is not private for other family, and so on. So to make sure that we have at least one common understanding of data privacy, this is something challenging. And then it comes actually to the regulations actually that need to be considered to make sure that it's done. Usually security comes with a large bill. So how can I can either security or even privacy. Privacy is more. We saw all of us the change in the world when the GDPR was enforced actually. It was targeting European citizens. However, European citizens are not only confined in Europe, they are everywhere. So everyone responded. So yes, policy is a driver, and I think in order to protect it, yes, we need to have a collaborative, as Dheba said, and a technical actually collaborative to make it a very, let's say, working solution. And smart city is coming, either we like it or not, as smartphone.
Thank you for distinguishing data privacy and data protection. I guess the distinction is really important to know how to tackle each concern. And so from what I'm hearing, data is really an integral part in driving smart cities. And considering the nature of smart cities being technology dependent and highly and possibly AI enabled, what ethical challenges are emerging with this nature of how smart cities are operating? Dr. Amira.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, so you have a reservoir of data, and then you have on top of it an AI and machine learning and programming, and you need to have the trust at the heart of that smart city. You can't have a smart city without trust. And in a recent research that Deloitte has conducted of over 1,400 CEOs, over 40% of those CEOs have mentioned that one of the biggest challenges they have is the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. They have questions around, can you trust AI? Is it secure enough? Will it ever harm humans? And if it does so, who's responsible? How can you make them accountable? Does it have a digital identity? So more questions than answers. However, recently, as you've seen, the OECD, the United Nations, UNESCO, and other governments such as China has been publishing regulations and frameworks, as well as principles and guidelines around how you can intelligently govern and operate artificial intelligence. This is a great starting point, and us as Deloitte, we created something we called the Trustworthy AI framework, where it looks at the design all the way to the deployment of AI in an organization, and I'm more than happy to discuss it with whoever wants to explore it offline. But it actually looks at the security, it looks at the coding from explainability perspective, from a transparency perspective, privacy as well, fairness, etc. And it's an exciting field, and glad that you brought it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, sometimes questions are more enlightening than answers, so we welcome any amount of questions. And so now we've shed light on what we might expect on the horizon of emerging threats along with smart cities. Now, if we want to have a resilient and empowered future, and considering that cyber professionals are always having this challenge of trying to be at pace with the technical race, we don't want to hinder that development, but we want to have better breaks for that innovation to go faster. So I want to take that from a technical perspective, moving into a government, corporate, and individual level. So I want to understand what kind of technical considerations or recommendations we can ensure to have in order for technical resiliency of these smart cities that are being built. And we can start with you, Dr. Fatemah.
All right, I'm the tech girl here. Okay, so when we talk about defenses, what we really care about is, or what we really want to consider here are the threat actors, which are basically the hackers, and the threat models. So generally speaking, the threat actors or the hackers are divided into two types. So we have off-path hackers, and we have man-in-the-middle attackers, which are the insiders. For the sake of time, let me just focus here on the off-path attackers. So the best way to secure systems from being compromised by off-path hackers, from getting their hand on the data, is, as we know, by using cryptography. So by doing this, the traffic is encrypted, and the hackers would need specific tools, specific skills, specific methods to break the crypto systems in order to get their hands to the plain text. So, for instance, to secure HTTP, we have HTTPS. To secure DNS, we have DNSSEC, and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, these cryptographic solutions require very heavy computations that cannot be carried out by these resource-constrained devices, which are basically the IoTs. And for that, cybersecurity specialists and practitioners from all over the world, they work together and they came up with this proposal, which is called lightweight cryptography. So basically, they try to break down the problems into sub-problems. So for example, we have lightweight crypto systems for pairing. We have lightweight crypto systems for finding the nearest neighbor. We have lightweight crypto systems for connectivity, for sending the encrypted data, let's say between the IoT nodes and the edges, then all the way to the fog and to the cloud. All of these fall under the umbrella of lightweight cryptography. Another thing that we really need to consider is data privacy, as we have just discussed, and the different attack surfaces, the different threat models, starting from the weakest link, which is between the IoT node and the, let's say, the default gateway, all the way up to the fog, then to the cloud. If all these things are put in the table for discussion, I am sure we will end up with a secure and resilient smart city.
I want to echo that same question, but from a regulatory and governmental perspective. What frameworks or, dare I say, mandates have to be in place to sort of empower those smart cities to thrive securely?
Okay, I would, to answer this, I would go back to understanding, because I cannot regulate something. What is it that I'm regulating? So again, I'm looking to smart cities as components, okay? They are smart components interacting together, okay? Integrated and interacting together. So we actually, here in Saudi Arabia, actually, the National Cybersecurity Authority, they have already launched the essential cybersecurity controls. They also launched the controls, the critical systems, cybersecurity controls, and also just recently they launched the data protection controls, and it was for public consultation, and it's already now prepared to be released. And again, there's some work on smart cities guidelines, not regulations, because I'm regulating what is the component, okay, and how they should be secured. And then I give guidelines on when you integrate them, how you also make them also secure. So when we talk about regulation, I believe we need regulation on physical layer, on infrastructure and OT and cybersecurity in general layer, on the data protection layer, on the data privacy layer. All those together should be like in harmony, let's say, not conflicting, but enabling smart cities to be more smarter.
Amazing. More smarter. This means more secure, because being smart is actually being secure. And I want to also drag this question onto Dheba, and I want to look at this from a corporate entity's perspective in terms of the governing efforts that are required to ensure that corporate entities and innovations can really advance securely.
I think, Noha, as you have mentioned, cybersecurity can no longer be an afterthought. And this could be achieved by having security by design. So if you build the cyber defenses within the core of your smart city, this would be starting by having the proper cybersecurity framework and then embedding it within the corporate project and the business processes. And when it comes to the implementation of this framework, it will allow to go step by step into securing emerging technology that our corporate are facing. That will start with policy development and enforcement, security architecture, and even testing to ensure that the risks are being mitigated and we have a resilience program in place. Also, it is recommended to have testing or proof of concepts, test them to withstand simulated cyber attacks before having a larger deployed system in place.
I love the keyword of embedding security and ensuring that, and this is actually echoes the movement of the shift left and ensuring that cybersecurity is addressed as early as possible. I want to take that same thing. I love the picture that we've painted in understanding what's on the horizon. I want to tackle it from what can individuals do, as the human factor is a really highly important factor in any cybersecurity conversation. And considering that in smart cities, the implications are not limited to business impact or financial impact, but rather human lives. So what awareness measures do we need to take to educate the masses in adopting these life-embedded smart cities?
Yes, you're spot on. Yes, you actually cannot have a smart city without smart people. So with that said, in order to have an educated workforce and citizens that are aware of those security threats, you need to bring in different stakeholders to support the education of the community. One of which definitely creating a new generation of cyber warriors and the workforce, starting from schools, universities, education to employment, vocational learning, all the way to lifelong learning, as well as using the cyber ranges for training and educational programs. So that's one. But the cyber workforce, as you can see, smart cities is a huge attack surface. So you cannot just depend on the information security professionals to defend the smart or cognitive city. You need the help of every citizen. Every citizen, just going back to the privacy, has the right to know what are the threats out there. Every citizen must know how to defend themselves, how to report it, how to critically analyze or critically think about the threats that are coming their way so that they can protect themselves, not only personally, but also professionally. So that's the second one, is adopting a holistic approach to educating the community. One is the cyber professionals. Second is the end users, all citizens. And the third one, as my colleague have mentioned, you have lots of emerging technologies. So there are lots of questions that are unanswered. There are lots of technologies that are you still need to work on the research and still need to have some gaps to fill. So you need to have a lot of investment from a research and development perspective. You need to innovate in order to find solutions to those emerging technologies such as quantum computing, artificial intelligence, crypto, etc. So the investment in that research and innovation is key. In order to also respond back to what Dr. Haya has mentioned, you need to understand how you bring all of those emerging technologies, integrate them together, because we still don't have the answers, how to scale them up across a whole city, and then how to secure them. So having said that, the investment in innovation, investment in cyber workforce, and the investment in citizens is extremely important. So you need to bring in a quadruple helix, with the fourth one being the community of white hackers. And we call out on all the white hackers out there. They have to come together and collaborate. It's through this partnership that you can drive the human capital development, and you can create and transform the labor market, specifically in an industry where you have 0% unemployment rate. It is a war on talent in cybersecurity, and every one of us know that. We always have challenges in terms of recruiting very good cybersecurity talent, let alone very good cybersecurity female talent. I hope that answers your questions.
It does, and even more.
Habibi.
And you mentioned the human factor and investing in citizens. So I guess securing the ecosystem of smart cities end to end is as crucial as it gets. And Dr. Haya, and I know the National Cybersecurity Authority has had many awareness campaigns, especially the CERT initiatives. How are smart city awareness campaigns are different in educating citizens?
Okay, for me, actually, I think that if I want to educate or aware the user, okay, the citizen, the smart citizen who will live in these smart cities, I will go back to, and excuse me if I'm using this example all the time, smartphone, when it did come before, we had a resistance from some people because they didn't know how it works. They didn't know what's in it for them. They didn't know, is it secure? Where is my data? And so on and so forth. So the first, I think, line with the awareness is that I need to aware them why it's useful. okay, why it's going to make a difference in your life, okay, why you need to have it, and also how you are protected. And this is not only because the citizens need to know that they have a right on their data. When we go to the market or we want more analytic, we are hungry for data. However, the ownership of the data should be always with the individual, and he should give the consent. And then the government and the regulatory actually bodies role by being proactive, developing the policies that will guarantee that right is preserved. So I think both of these can be like the essence of any awareness campaign around smart cities.
And I guess this echoes your message back when you mentioned the data privacy and how it's actually subjective from each culture and each individual. And I want to also tackle this from, I know, Ms. Dheba, that you're head of the cybersecurity program development. So how are these awareness efforts different from your perspective in terms of creating the perfect and the right culture in terms of cyber knowledge?
I would like to add to what my colleague has mentioned about the importance of the leaders of a smart city. Leaders need to aware about what smart cities technologies are, what are the benefits, and how can individual impact their quality of life. Because if people understand how would this improve their life, they are more likely to participate. And I think we all now understand by having new technologies, we have new responsibilities. And that's why the importance of cyber awareness and to how to use the technology securely and how can we protect ourselves as well.
Amazing point. And I really want to keep this conversation going, and I want to have a perfect conclusion to all the great thoughts that we've had in painting this full picture of what threats are we expecting, how can we ensure resiliency, and what efforts can we perform at hand to ensure that we actually innovate in this space. So I want to take a 1-minute takeaway message from each one of you, and if we can start with you, Dr. Fatemah.
Sure. So I think I will follow up with Dr. Amira's point when she talks about collaboration. Collaboration is very important, especially in building efficient smart cities securely and resiliency. And what we mean by collaboration, we need collaboration between the industry and the academia, the practitioners and the researchers. We need collaboration between vendors, between the end users, between all parties that are involved in the process. So for instance, if one of the vendors has a limitation accomplishing a specific task or in producing a specific product, it's okay to outsource to third parties and ask them for help to accomplish the task or to develop the product for them. So collaboration is very important.
Very good. Collaboration, I love that.
Agree.
Ms. Dheba?
I would like to conclude and focus on the fact that we are a youthful kingdom, with the youth comprising almost more than 60% of the population. And youth will accelerate the adoption of emerging technology and smart cities, and it will be upon all of us to accelerate also the security capabilities and ensure an empowered and brighter future.
Thank you so much. Dr. Haya.
Well, actually, I would like, I know that smart cities are coming. I would like to retire there at one day, long time. And then before that, our generation, our kids, the generation coming so soon, this is their cities. So in better of building the smart city, I would like us to see building the smart citizen, the smart individual who will live, building the culture, the smart culture for those people who will be the inhabitants of these cities. So this is something we shouldn't just only think tech, we should think culture, we should think about our identities, either here in Saudi or every country identity. Smart city shouldn't change who we are, should just make us more comfortable, serve us, not take ourselves our identity. This is what I think about.
Thank you so much. I love that point. Dr. Amira.
Yes, I love indices. So I would like to close with an index. It's the Global Innovation Index. And I've noticed that most of the Arab worlds, myself coming from an Arab world, we're ranking very high, specifically the GCC and particularly in KSA. We rank very high in the GII innovation from an ecosystem perspective, and our senior leaders God bless them, they have invested a lot in building the smart cities or the ecosystem to create the most complex and sophisticated ecosystem for their citizens. But at the same time, the GII output, okay, which is kind of the inverse of the input, we are lagging behind on that index. The GII output is a depiction of the output of per citizen. So per citizen, how much innovation and how much investment we are creating, or how much conversion of that investment from a country perspective is being converted into an output, into innovation, into research, is quite low. So I would encourage the people and the citizens and all of us to work harder on converting the investments that our senior leaders are putting into creating the smart cities. Now it's up to us to work and innovate and continue studying and learning in order to come up with the solutions and keep up with the learning of our cognitive cities that we will be living in. So I'll leave it up to the citizen and the people. We have a lot of work to do. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I really love how your different insights, which reflects your different expertise and backgrounds, has created this full picture of us understanding smart cities and tackling them from different cyber-related areas. So what I'm hearing is that smart cities are inevitable, collaboration is key, and culture is the way for us to proceed securely in adopting smart yet secure cities. I want to end this on a positive note instead of echoing the threats and concerns that are coming with every new technology, that this actually opens up doors of challenging and more learning, as Dr. Amira mentioned, and more research. And this actually also boosts the business aspect of it, even in the cybersecurity space, in terms of solutions that can secure these solutions and enable these businesses and creative minds in going forward with full speed, knowing that there are better breaks to secure these innovations as they are being implemented in real life. I thank each one of you for adding a very insightful insights to this conversation. And whoever is still interested, like me, you can take this conversation offline with any of our respected panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.